Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
His hand slid my clothes off, tracing my skin with a reverence that made me tremble. Like a spring breeze, his touch ignited every curve, fingers grazing my ribs, my hips, my thighs, a dance of heat and want. Our bodies pressed close, breaths weaving into a raw, urgent rhythm. I clung to him, lost in the tide of it, sweat blurring our edges, merging us into one pulsing thing. This is everything. I gasped against his shoulder, every wall I'd built crumbling in his arms, reborn as a woman who could feel, who could want. Hey everyone, I'm Evelyn Cole, 52 years old. Life with my husband Nathan Cole has rolled along like a lazy river, calm, steady, almost too still, and yet there's this hollow ache that's shadowed me for years, a quiet gnawing I can't shake. Every morning, I stand in front of the bathroom mirror in our suburban Atlanta home, tucked into Georgia's sprawling quiet, studying the roadmap times carved across my face. My cheeks, once plump and rosy from younger days, have softened into subtle dips, and my skin's traded its taut glow for a softer, lived-in feel. My dark hair still catches the light with a stubborn shine, but the fine lines fanning out from my eyes and the gentle sag along my jawline whisper stories of laughter, tears, and too many late nights. Our house hums with an eerie stillness. Nathan's always sprawled in the living room, half buried in the morning paper on a leather couch that's faded from chestnut to a tired gray. Dust swirls in lazy beams above his chipped coffee mug, a silent tally of the years we've let slip through our fingers like sand. Am I just fading away like this? I murmur one morning, the words escaping before I can catch them, my breath fogging the mirror. Nathan's 53, still chasing that VP slot at the logistics firm he's poured his life into since we moved south. He's fit as a fiddle, runs 5 Burmese chots on weekends to blow off steam, but that ambition stacked a wall between us, brick by slow brick, over 2 decades. We've been married 22 years, no kids, just us two rattling around in this peaceful, predictable shell. But lately, it's like there's a crack in the foundation. There's a gap between us, isn't there? The thought lands heavy, uninvited. Nathan's a phantom behind his paper, dodging conversation with grunts about long days. I can't even pinpoint the last time we locked eyes over takeout pizza or tumbled into bed together. Those moments have blurred into a cold, distant haze. When was the last time we really saw each other? I dig through my mind, but it's like chasing smoke. One restless Tuesday, I decided to rattle the cage, get moving, maybe spark something new. I convinced Nathan to join me at a local jiu-jitsu studio that had been popping up everywhere, crazy popular lately, even for middle-aged folks like us looking to stay sharp and ditch the couch. Come on, Nathan, let's try something together for once, I nudged, my voice etched with a hope I barely recognized. He grumbled, yeah, sure, why not, and shuffled along, his reluctance practically trailing behind him like a shadow. I wanted to kick the rust off my creaky joints and, if I'm being real, chase a flicker of something, anything, to jolt me awake. Stepping into the jiu-jitsu studio, the air thrummed with the sharp tang of sweat, laced with the faint bleach whiff of scrubbed mats. The slap of bare feet echoed off concrete walls, and a rickety ceiling fan buzzed overhead, stirring the sticky Georgia heat. Sunlight sliced through smudged windows, glinting off scuffed hardwood, while faded jiu-jitsu banners, some touting local champs, dangled along the walls, hinting at gritty victories and bruised egos. A handful of folks milled around, swapping easy laughs and stretches. One couple caught my eye like a spotlight snapped on Grayson Reed and his wife, Avery Reed. Grayson, 56, had a solid build that screamed grappling pro, broad shoulders, a stance rooted like an oak. Avery, 52, radiated a vitality that hit me sideways, smooth, sun-kissed skin, eyes that sparkled with mischief, and a figure that curved in ways mine hadn't in years. Her long hair swung in a sleek ponytail, effortlessly chic yet pulsing with a quiet allure. Could I ever pull that off? I wondered, jealousy flickering like a match in my chest. Hi, I'm Evelyn Cole. Nice to meet you all, I said, stepping forward with a grin that felt half-forced, nerves buzzing under my skin. Hey there, I'm Grayson Reed. Looking forward to rolling, he replied, his voice low and steady, a warm current that washed over me like a balm. There was a quiet strength to him. Every shift on the mat telegraphed his focus, and that deep tone tugged at me like a tide. I'm Avery Reed. Let's make it fun, Avery added, her smile soft but laced with a sharp, knowing edge that made me pause. She's stunning, I thought, floored by how she carried herself, like she owned every inch of the room. That day, we paired up for groundwork, men and women mixing it up on the mats. Luck, or fate, landed me with Grayson. Here's to a good roll, Grayson, I said, my voice wobbling like a tightrope walker losing balance. Same to you, Evelyn, he answered, flashing a grin that slammed my heart against my ribs. Standing close, I could feel the heat rolling off him, a living pulse that set mine racing. Why am I so shaky? I scolded myself, my thoughts a jumbled mess as I tried to steady my breath. Let's start with a pin, okay? Grayson suggested, guiding me down with a gentle hand. He settled over me with care, his weight pressing just enough to anchor me to the mat. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. His firm chest grazed mine, and I felt his heartbeat, strong, steady, alive, thumping against me like a rhythm I couldn't ignore. His thighs brushed my hips, grounding me with a quiet intensity that made my skin hum. His hands pinned my shoulders, warmth seeping through my thin GI, his breath grazing my ear like a whisper of something forbidden. Relax, don't tense up, he murmured, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers skittering down my spine, pooling somewhere deep. Okay. I tried to ease up, but as he leaned closer, his scent, sweat and cedar, flooded my senses, and my heart sped up fast. What am I doing? My mind spun, a chaotic swirl of guilt, fear, and a craving I couldn't name. Every touch from Grayson sent a rush through me, a jolt I hadn't felt in years, electric, forbidden, reckless. Yet Nathan's face, distant, familiar, etched with years of quiet nights, flashed like a warning I couldn't heed. This isn't right, I told myself, my pulse hammering as Grayson's fingers lingered on my arm. But the thrill, the deep, aching pull, rushed through me, shoving aside every doubt I tried to hold on to. Was this betrayal, or was I finally waking up from a life half-lived? Grayson. His name slipped out, shaky as a leaf in the wind. He looked down, his gaze fierce and unguarded, a storm brewing in those hazel eyes. Sometimes, though, I caught a shadow of loneliness flicker there, a crack in his steady armor. You good? He asked, concern softening his tone, his brow creasing just enough to show he cared. Yeah, I'm fine, I whispered, dodging his stare, my cheeks burning under the weight of it. Next, it was my turn to pin him. As my body pressed into his, heat surged through me, a current zipping from my fingertips to my core. My hands gripped his shoulders, legs brushing his waist, a subtle tremor rippling between us like static. Evelyn, he said low, locking eyes. Desire burned in his look, raw, unfiltered, pulling me in. Does he want me? The thought darted through me, sharp and intoxicating. Closer. Grayson tugged at my waist, drawing me in with a gentle pull. Our bodies fused, his taut abs pressing into my stomach, breaths weaving together in a tangle of heat and need. My chest thumped hard, a steady beat I couldn't quiet. Grayson. I kept saying his name, a lifeline in the chaos. "You've got something, Evelyn. Can't take my eyes off you," he whispered, his breath hot against my cheek. For the first time in forever, I felt like a woman again, seen, craved, alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Who knew being wanted could crash over you like this, a rush of heat and longing? People buzzed around us, their chatter a distant hum, but it was like we'd carved out our own bubble, a stolen pocket of time. When the others glanced away, Grayson brushed his lips against my forehead, a fleeting, dizzying rush that left me reeling. This is wrong. Guilt gnawed at me, a dull ache tugging at my gut, but my body wouldn't listen. It was already too far gone. Then I felt eyes prickling my skin. Glancing up, I saw Nathan laughing with Avery, their voices bright and easy. Cutting through the studio's din, something intimate hung between them, a shared spark I couldn't unsee. My stomach knotted, twisting tight. Nathan smiling like that? Avery stuck close to him on the mat, her posture relaxed yet radiating a quiet confidence that made my chest ache. I'd seen him charm women before, at office parties, casual cookouts, but today it sliced deeper, a blade I couldn't dodge. Grayson had sparked something in me I'd buried under years of routine, a fire I thought had gone cold. What do I even want? The question clawed at me, the old embers I'd smothered roaring back to life, leaving me dizzy and unmoored. After practice, we piled into a nearby barbecue joint, a rustic hole in the wall with a weathered wooden sign swaying in the evening breeze. The air hung heavy with the smoky scent of slow-cooked ribs and brisket, grease-stained tables buzzing with the clatter of plates, and the hum of folks laughing over clinking bottles in the packed room. Grayson and Avery tagged along, and I ended up next to him, a little buzz humming in my chest like a live wire. Beers flowed, cold bottles clinking as tongues loosened. "Evelyn, come on, put some grit into it next time. Age isn't an excuse," Grayson teased, chuckling as he wiped sweat from his brow with a napkin. "Oh, come on, I'm a lost cause," I shot back, laughing along, the sound lighter than I'd felt in ages. He really listened, leaning in, his warm eyes pulling me into their orbit like I was the only one in the room. "You're pretty incredible, Evelyn," he leaned closer to whisper, his voice a soft rasp against the chatter. My cheeks burned, a flush creeping up my neck. "No, I'm not." I ducked my head, flustered, but his hand brushed mine, brief, electric. I'm falling for him, I realized, the truth slamming into me like a freight train, heavy and undeniable. Looking up, I caught Nathan and Avery locked in a shared grin across the table, their eyes alight with something unspoken, a private glow that made my throat tighten. Words failed me, stuck somewhere between shock and suspicion. Are they? Doubt wormed its way in, slithering through my thoughts, but I couldn't pin it down. Where are we headed with this? That night, sleep dodged me like a skittish cat. Grayson's face, his gravelly voice, the ghost of his touch looping through my mind on repeat. What do I do with this? I wrestled with the ache, a restless longing I couldn't shove back into its box. A few days later, after a sweaty roll, I ran into Grayson outside the studio, the humid air clinging to us like a second skin. "Evelyn, coffee?" he offered, his tone casual but his eyes intent. "Sure," I blurted, surprising myself with how fast it came out. At a quiet cafe down the street, wooden floors creaking underfoot, the hiss of an espresso machine in the background, we opened up. Sometimes I dread going home. Same old grind, day in, day out, he confessed, his voice heavy with a solitude that mirrored mine, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. Me too. Nathan and I barely talk anymore, just roommates sharing a mortgage, I admitted, staring into my latte as if it held answers. "You? Feeling like that?" "You always seem so alive," he said, his gaze locking onto mine, steady and searching. My heart skipped, a quick stumble. "You're warm, Grayson." Maybe that's why I'm hooked, I let slip, the words tumbling out raw and unguarded. We talked for hours, peeling back layers, his quiet humor, my buried dreams. His hand found mine across the table, a tentative brush that lingered, and I didn't pull away. He gets me, I thought, a first and longer than I could remember. His touch, rough fingertips, gentle pressure, made me feel treasured, filling a void I'd let grow wild and empty. Next week, the Reeds suggested a group session. Nathan paired with Avery, me with Grayson. "Let's get serious today," Grayson said with a playful smirk that dared me to match him. "You're on," I replied, forcing a grin as my pulse kicked into high gear. His rolls were quick and slick, fluid sweeps and locks I could barely counter as we grappled, sweat beading on my brow. He's not holding back, I thought, awed by the precision in every move, the way he controlled the mat like it was his domain. "Evelyn, more power in your hips," he whispered hotly in my ear, his breath a jolt against my skin. My body jumped before my mind could catch up, instinct taking over. "Got it." I shifted, our frames locking tighter, a seamless tangle. His hands gripped my waist, firm yet careful, his chest skimming my shoulder in a way that made me dizzy. "Perfect control," he said, pulling me close, his voice a low growl of approval. I buried my face in his scent, sweat, cedar, him, and let it hook me, reeling me in deep. On the mat, he pinned me again, his body firm against mine, breath close enough to taste. "You're beautiful, Evelyn," he said, his eyes piercing through me like a blade of light. I couldn't breathe, the air stolen from my lungs. That word, beautiful, crashed over me like a breaker, making me feel loved, alive, whole in a way I'd forgotten I could be. "What?" Shock and joy tangled inside me, a messy knot of wonder and want. "Grayson," I murmured, barely a whisper. As heads turned away, he kissed my lips, just a brush, soft but electric, a spark that lit me up. "I'm crazy about you, Evelyn." He breathed, his voice rough with need. "I feel the same," I confessed, the words spilling out like they'd been waiting forever. That cafe talk had stitched us together. This kiss sealed it tight. Love wasn't said aloud, but our hearts screamed it, loud and clear. "I can feel like this?" I marveled, stunned, my chest tight with disbelief. With Grayson, I glowed again. His gaze, his hands, every glance waking a femininity I'd let waste away in years of gray routine. After showers, we lingered alone, the air thick with the damp vibe of jiu-jitsu GIs slung over benches. "Evelyn," he called softly, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Yeah." I met his eyes, steady hazel locked on me. "Tomorrow night, can we meet?" My heart lurched, a wild thump against my ribs. What do I say? I hesitated, caught in the pull of his stare, and he kissed me gently, slow, tender. "Let me know later," he said, pulling back with a half smile. Alone, I spiraled, my thoughts a storm. That night, lying beside Nathan's steady snores, Grayson consumed me. His touch, his words, the way he saw me. How did I fall this hard? I whispered into the dark, my voice lost to the ceiling. Next morning, I fed Nathan a lie, meeting a friend, and set up with Grayson. We met at a rundown motel just outside town, a bare-bones joint with creaky bed springs, that stale, musty smell of forgotten road trips, and a flickering vacancy sign buzzing in the dusk. It felt like our secret hideout, a world apart. Grayson wore faded jeans and a worn tee, his eyes blazing with something fierce. "Evelyn," he said, pulling me close, his hands firm on my hips. "No interruptions here." His scent, woodsy, warm, wrapped around me like a blanket. Our kiss was fire, his lips melting into mine, a slow burn that spread through every nerve. "I love you, Evelyn," he said, easing me onto the lumpy mattress, his voice thick with it. I love you too. I meant it, every syllable heavy with truth. His hand slid my clothes off, tracing my skin with a reverence that made me tremble. Like a spring breeze, his touch ignited every curve, fingers grazing my ribs, my hips, my thighs, a dance of heat and want. Our bodies pressed close, breaths weaving into a raw, urgent rhythm. I clung to him, lost in the tide of it, sweat blurring our edges, merging us into one pulsing thing. This is everything. I gasped against his shoulder, every wall I'd built crumbling in his arms, reborn as a woman who could feel, who could want. His breath warmed my neck, a tide of heat crashing over me, and we filled the night, skin on skin, heartbeat to heartbeat. Pleasure, after so long, froze time itself, a stolen eternity in that dingy room. Catching our breath, tangled in damp sheets, he asked, "What now?" His voice shook, vulnerable for once. I had no answer, my mind a blank slate. "I won't leave Avery, but I can't lose you," he said, his eyes searching mine, pain flickering there. It stabbed me, a dull blade in my chest. "Same here, Nathan, but you." We were mirrors, reflecting the same fractured want. "Let's keep going," I said, my voice small but sure. He nodded, a silent pact. "Is this okay?" Shame crept in, a cold whisper against the heat, but I was too far gone to turn back. His warmth was a lifeline, home promised only silence, a frost I couldn't face. "What do I want?" I asked myself, staring at the cracked ceiling, but the question hung there, unanswered. We met secretly after, jiu-jitsu rolls, motel nights, craving each other like air, guilt swelling with every stolen glance. One day I saw Nathan and Avery laughing mid-grapple, hands brushing with a casual ease that twisted my gut. Jealousy and confusion churned, a bitter brew. They're that close? I'm not the only one. Relief and torment tangled up, a messy knot I couldn't unravel. At home, I tested Nathan, casual as I could muster. "You seemed happy today." He lowered his paper, eyes flat. "Just a good time," he shrugged, voice clipped. I wanted to push, to crack him open, but my tongue stayed glued. Years slipped by, the four of us caught in this silent mess. We'd meet for awkward dinners at that same barbecue joint, ribs and beer masking the tension, plates clinking, voices too loud. Under the table, toes brushed like a secret code while we smiled and rambled about nothing, pretending the cracks weren't splitting wide open. One sticky afternoon, alone at the studio, I collapsed on the mat, its cool dampness kissing my flushed skin through my gia. Heat surged inside, a wild pulse I couldn't tame. I'm still alive. Not anger, not sorrow, just my heart thumping hard, raw, real. I stood, shaky but sure, and bowed to the mat, a quiet vow. I'll keep going. Even in this chaos, I told myself, the words steadying me like an anchor. Years later, the edges softened. Grayson and I still met, but the fire cooled to a steady glow, comfort more than blaze. Nathan and Avery carried on too. The four of us sometimes crossed paths, a strange, unspoken truce. On the way to jiu-jitsu one muggy evening, Grayson glanced over from the driver's seat. "You've lost weight, Evelyn, looking sharp." "Your gray's taking over," I teased back, a bittersweet laugh bubbling up as I tugged at his silver-streaked hair. "How long can we keep this up?" he asked, voice low, eyes on the road. "I don't know." I trailed off, staring out at the blurring pines. "No regrets meeting you, though." My chest warmed, a soft ache blooming. "Me neither," I said, meaning it deep. "Time to wind down, maybe," he said, eyes distant, tracing some far-off horizon. "We've had our run." It stung deep, a bruise I didn't expect. "Avery's probably onto us," he mused, thumb tapping the wheel. "Nathan too," I added, the weight settling in. "What's next?" I'll talk to Avery, he said, resolute. I'll face Nathan. We decided to end it, a quiet cut to a thread stretched thin. Days later, I spilled everything to Nathan, Grayson, us, the years of drift. He stared, silent too long, his jaw tight under the kitchen's harsh light. I was with Avery, he admitted, voice flat, eyes avoiding mine. No shock, just a dull thud in my chest, heavy as lead. This is us now? He nodded, slow and final. 22 years, done. I'd tossed all night before confessing, terrified of the collapse, my stomach churning with every tick of the clock, but I was done with lies, done with the mask. Grayson woke me up, lit a match to a life I'd let dim. That was enough. Nathan found his own spark with Avery, a path I couldn't follow. We don't need each other anymore, he said, bitter, his voice cracking on the edge. Trust, love, long gone, dust on a shelf we'd stopped tending. We divorced amicably, papers signed over coffee, a new start carved from the end. After, sadness crushed me, waves of it, heavy and cold, but freedom crept in too, a lightness I hadn't known I'd lost. A mistake, maybe, but it handed me back myself, rough edges and all. I live alone now in a small apartment downtown. Grayson's split from Avery too. We grab meals sometimes at a diner near the studio, greasy fries, black coffee, talking over old times, no more passion, just a steady friendship forged in the mess. Jiu-jitsu's still my thing. Nathan, Avery, Grayson, me, all on our own winding roads, crossing paths now and then like ghosts of what was. No regrets. That journey, messy, wild, raw, built the me I am now, scars and strength stitched together. One crisp morning, I looked up at a sky so wide and blue it felt like it could swallow me whole. Back on the mat, its chill kissed my feet through my socks, grounding me in the moment. Sweat, tears, the ache of it all. I felt alive, every breath a quiet triumph. I'll keep moving, I whispered, stepping up, the mat creaking under me. Grayson's a warm memory now, a chapter closed but never erased. That's my story, folks. Thanks for listening. Love to hear your thoughts.